right, you guys, welcome back. It's your girl Jamekia Anderson. I'm here to talk to you guys about SAOs and for you new teachers or for veteran teachers, however, you guys should know that an SAO is the Student Achievement Objective. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you as we go through some of these objectives. So, boop, share. All right. So I'm basing this off of Polk County. This is where I work for the last 5.5 years because I did do another county for a half a year. But pretty much during this time, they started to implement what we call the SAO process, the Student Achievement Objectives. I'm gonna just say SAO just to keep it short, but I do want you to know what the term means. So again, I saw it being implemented. And in a previous video, I stated to you guys, I always chose the VAM scores because I just didn't want to do all the additional work. And as much as people are like, it's the same amount of work, and it is and it isn't, but it's how great do you want to be, okay? I'm a little bit of a perfectionist at times. It was too much. So I always chose VAM scores. And my final year, based off of the testing changes, I had to choose SAOs. But I saw that although they had pushed it out 3 years prior, people were still struggling with understanding what an SAO is, how to implement it, how to do it, how to construct it. So we're just going to talk about it a little bit again from the English language arts version because that's what I taught. And you guys can always still look at this recording, any teacher, and hopefully just apply it to whatever it is that you're doing. So getting into this document, and you can Google this, you guys, they do have a lot of resources. I saw like some videos and different things that were posted in Moodle and Schoology, I believe, as well. So there are some things there, but if you just need some additional clarity, here you go. Just stay tuned. You can fast forward as you want, whatever you need to do. All right. So in this process with your manual, this is to provide you with an understanding of these things. So what the SAO is, the role that the teacher evaluation process is, how to create a high quality SAO, the effectiveness of the SAO, and then appropriate preparation for beginning, middle, and end of year evaluation and reviews. Now, I'm gonna go over this, but then I'm sure I'm gonna do a separate video probably and show you guys my SAO and kind of how I did it and manipulated my materials. Again, my lovely background is probably gonna disappear. It's a gray wall behind me that looks so cute, right? But let's just dive into it. So, excuse me. The I'm about to choke out, child. I'm sorry. The goal is that the goal for every teacher is to be a highly effective teacher. And in the next video, I'm gonna have another resource that we were given. So when you start out at I was about to say Florida State. Sorry. When you start out in Polk County, you go through TIPS training. And through TIPS training, they usually give you a 3-ring binder. I was looking to see if I had one in here in my office, but I don't. But they usually give you a 3-ring binder or some materials. They have books that are available. They also have this little resource flip book. And I remember when I started, they told us, they were like, listen, do not lose this flip book because it's like gold. It's like the education Bible. And it shows you as a teacher what it looks like to be poor, needs, I think it's like needs more work, effective, and then a highly effective teacher. So it shows you based off the point system of how you're going to be graded when administration comes through your room to do your assessments or your evaluations. And so if you get those resources, if you're a new teacher or if you are thinking about becoming a teacher, when you go through the process, please make sure that you keep hold of all of that material. It is very useful. If they're handing out any books, for those of you who have not gone through the process, but you're thinking about becoming a teacher, if they're handing out any books through the TIPS training, ask them for a copy. Ask them if you can have it. It does not hurt to ask. That's my belief. Again, my personal belief, but it doesn't hurt to ask because they're receiving a lot of different materials every year or however long. And you, one out of however many people, if you're asking for it, you may be the only person who's asking for it. And they have those resources spread out on the different desks, whatever else. But those resources will help you be more successful in the long run. Sometimes they may be low on it. And I was trying to look to see if I have any books, but I'll go through some of those things in another video as well. But if they have the books, take them. It doesn't hurt to just look through it and browse through it every now and again. Use some sticky notes. I'm a sticky note queen. Use sticky notes to highlight. I mean, not highlight, but keep, certain things that you find interesting. Just to let y'all know, sticky notes galore. To, like I said, use the sticky notes to bookmark whatever things that come up to you that you find very interesting, because it's going to be valuable to you to know these different resources, to use them and implement them in your classroom, to use what's most effective for you to be a highly effective teacher. And if it doesn't really work, then you can change it. There's so many resources around. And I might create one myself one of these days. So anyway, what it says here to be a highly effective teacher, you can read it on your own, and I'm going to read just a few things, but you have a direct influence on your students' achievement as well as their lifelong education and career goals. There'll be plenty of videos. You guys will see how I have a conversation with my students and what I do in order to influence them. I always look for lifelong. Whether it's education or career, it's all the same to me. I want them to be impacted properly and positively as much as possible. So you have to identify who you are as an individual and as a teacher, and what you want to get across to them as they are with you for an entire year. And some schools, because I have had this happen to me, sometimes you're able to follow your students from 6th grade. For example, I was a middle school teacher, from 6th grade all the way up until 8th. And so those are real quality bonds that you foster with those students, and they become like your own children. You really feel like you're a mother or aunt or whatever to those individuals as well. However, let's keep going into this. You are here to analyze your standards and set ambitious goals for the students. I'm going to show you that in another video, how you can apply these as well. Properly implement instruction strategies based on students' needs and assessment results. Your assessments could be your formative or summative assessments. It can also be, again, any state assessments that is provided. In my particular one, I use, like, again, I told you we started at a different time. So I used the last test that they had, as well as the new testing that, I don't even know what it's called at this point. Y'all catch blanks. Y'all just have to excuse me. But I used the previous year's test scores as well as the state test that they took, and then they usually have like a star test. And I looked to see what they should have known, what they ended the year with, how they're beginning the year, and tried to balance that out for myself. It's all up to you about where you start or what your baseline is. But as we progress, we'll talk about those things. And then, of course, the last thing, school is always pushing that word collaborative. So make sure that you do collaborate with colleagues, with other leaders, just to improve the instruction or increase student achievement. And again, this may be that you're working with, if some of you guys have the MTSS strategies. So if your students have behavior issues, making sure that you're talking with your administration, or you're talking with whomever is in whatever position or role that you need to. Because for me, most of ours went through our guidance counselors. And then because we had roughly 1,300 students at school, each one of our assistant principals had a grade level. And so making sure that you're talking to the correct assistant administrator for that particular grade level. And then because it may be different from what your actual subject area is, which for me, that was the case the last year. And then also if they have any, what is it called? if they have any other strategies or documentations on them. So, you know, you have your ELL students or LY students or ESOL students, and who's those individuals who can help you with that. And then a collaboration can even go further from just behavior and language barriers, but also to other teachers if they're focused, especially as a language arts teacher, if they're or a reading teacher. I did it for both because I was both. But as a reading and language arts teacher, you want to make sure that you're collaborating together with those, because the reading teacher can actually do some of the skills that you can't. As I stated in the previous one, when we looked at benchmarks, your reading teachers are able to go in and hone in on those fundamentals that you may not be able to as a language arts teacher. And then also pulling in that multi-tiered level of because for me, I would go and speak with our history teachers or the science teacher, or I really didn't dibble and dabble with the math teacher. Sorry, I love y'all though. But the history and the science teachers, to see what it is that they were learning during particular, you know, quarters, and then make sure that if I'm going to tap into some of those things, especially again as a reading teacher or even language arts, that when we pulled in those particular lessons, I can say, hey, aren't you learning this in this particular class? This can go along with X, Y, Z, or you guys tell me what you know, tapping into that KWL, like those prior, what do you know, want to know, and what you'll learn, or, you know, those prior things that you should have been learning. So again, collaboration is very important. But getting back into this SAO so that I don't go too far off, y'all. All right. We're going to scroll down. So here you want to make sure that you're setting meaningful goals. You're collaborating with other educators, and you're sharing those goals. That you're monitoring the students. It says and the teacher's progress, but you're monitoring the students' progress towards your particular goal, and that you have something to evaluate. And you're going to want to make sure that you keep all of that together. Typically, you will choose a class, and I don't know if I passed that piece yet. I don't know if I have or haven't. I don't think so, because I haven't studied this guide like that, but we're just going to go through it and learn together. Typically what's going to happen is that you're going to teach a class. When you are you're going to choose one of your classes. Say for instance, again, we had 6 periods. I would choose my first period class. I'm going to include all of those individuals that's within that class onto my list, depending on how big your class sizes are, because for the most part, we would have, well, my first period class, I think, was the smallest, but on average, I had anywhere from 20 to 30 students in a class. If I chose, usually first period was the smallest, so I would choose first period. I think last year I chose first period. But then I also, because I only had 20 students, I also chose a few from second period. And this is why. Let me tell you guys. And you could choose any period that you want, but if you go into the system, and they might change it after this, I don't know, hopefully not, cross our fingers. When you go into the system, it's going to allow you to add on additional students. I would highly recommend that you add on just a few more additional students for a number of reasons. The first reason is, especially when you're working in lower income neighborhoods, is that if a student missed so many days, you have the ability to drop them off of your SAO. And if I'm in a classroom where I know, or in a situation where I know that almost 50% of my students, especially at first period, that the majority of them may be late or may be absent, then I need as much cushion as I can to support me not losing too many students towards the end of the year. 2, I was at a school that were full of migrant workers, children. So a lot of my kids would leave mid-year or something like that. So I wanted to, again, create that cushion for myself. So hopefully they don't change the way that is done, because these are other issues that can arise. And I want, and based off of what I was hearing from other teachers, is that they got to a place where towards the end of the year, they may have only had 5 students on their SAO coming from 30. because students leave and go to other schools. Some students have behavior issues. So again, that could be going to another school, or they just miss so many days, being suspended or whatever have you. It's a lot that's there. And so in order to make sure that you still have a strong number to balance out what you to balance out what's going to be a big factor in your evaluation at the end of the year, you want that cushion as much as possible. And then, of course, just wanting to be honest, I know this probably isn't the most professional thing, but ladies and gentlemen, you know, some of your kids just don't want to do the work. And when they don't want to do the work, you need some additional students who can help save your scores. It happens. Because some of the kids who don't want to do the work, they show up every day so they can talk and hang out with their friends, and they sleep in class and, you know, whatever else. And you as a teacher, you can't do anything about those things. And so at the end of the day, if my job is based off of the way that I service these kids, and these kids are not attempting to take advantage of the information of all the things that I'm doing, but they still get to stick on my roster and on my evaluation, and I have all this documentation to show that I've contacted parents and that I've, you know, sat with them one-on-one or in small groups, or I've gave them additional time to turn in different work assignments and things, and their scores are still low because they're choosing to not be engaged. And I've exhausted myself. I've gone through the MTSS skills. I've gone through the PBIS stuff and all these other, you know, initiatives that are there. And most of even the administration has given up on them, and they're just like, it's above us now. Um, Again, documentation is everything, but having those additional students on your roster to balance out that monopoly, or not monopoly, but that I can't even think what it is, outlier. Thank you, math people. I felt your energy. To balance out that outlier, um it just is what it is. All right, so let's dive back into this, you guys. So with the SAO, you guys are going to have to choose a learning goal. Again, this should be based off of your benchmarks that you have. You have to have some assessments. So again, choose your assessments wisely. Make sure that you're keeping up with them. Plan accordingly. Plan early. The earlier, the better. And then, of course, your targets, which are your students and the outcome. All right. So boom, this is what I was trying to talk about earlier and I didn't. So we're going to read this because you need to know the purpose of the SAO. Well, actually, this is just the manual. But anyway, I told you guys before, oh, here's it, BAM. The SAO is to replace your BAM score, so value added model, which is, again, we used to have the ability to opt out. You don't have that ability anymore, but your SAO will allow you to see the improvement of what your students are doing. So the practice of the material and the outcome, their achievements at the end of the year. Here's a list of benefits and challenges. I'm not going to read through those things. I want you to see it. You can pause the screen right here and read it for yourself, or you can go and look this documentation up. Again, it is available online. You just type in something simple like SAO, teaching SAO, Polk County, whatever else, and it should pop up for you. That's all I did. Something to that extent. Let me scroll down and pause for here too. So pause it, make sure you're looking at it. Again, this is the benefits and the challenges. You can pause. All right. So the process. All right. The SAO process is student-centered, right? It's recognizing the impact that the teacher has on the classroom. They are based on research, and they support best practices such as prioritizing the most important standards, implementing your curriculum, and planning assessments. And I'm going to show you that as well in the next video, where I'm going to show you what my standards were, what I chose, how I built my SAO binder. Mine is quite thick. I did a little different, but it is what it is. I told y'all I'm a little different. But how you are covering the material, what materials you're providing to your students, what the standard is, how does it relate to the standards, how you're covering those standards in that by using that material. And then again, how the students are adjusting and actually understanding the skills and standards in place. And so this is just a way for you to demonstrate what you are teaching and what the students are actually learning, and then how they place on their tests as well. All right, so again, this here is just a little cycle. What you're doing, you identify the learning goals, you develop the assessments. Typically, 9 times out of 10, I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. Use the formative assessments or the questions that are provided within your books. Last year I used McGraw-Hill, so use the McGraw-Hill resources. You can use both what's in the book and what's online just as a factor, because again, you can use one as at the beginning of the week, you're looking at what the students know and don't know. Then again, when you reteach, or you have to, depending on whether the student was proficient in that area or whatever else, if you need to reteach it and then look at it again, you can use the online resources, or use the online resources to assist you in scaffolding out information for the students. And then there's usually 2 versions, one at a lower version and then the next at that particular grade level. It's all grade level based, but the questionings are in the first set of questions in the McGraw-Hill book are a little bit easier. They are broken down into like 2 or 3 simplified versions of a question, and then of course it becomes more what's the word I'm looking for, rigid, right, in the second piece of it. So make sure you're understanding what it is that you're looking for and what you want to do. Use the resources properly. I'm going to go through some of those things as well in another video, just to give you a demonstration. And then of course here, like I said, you're analyzing the baseline. So you choose your assessment, you look at the baseline, what your students are knowing, what they're not knowing, you establish targets, how you're going to scaffold the learning in order for your student to achieve that particular goal. You plan it, you implement it, right? Instruction, assessment, analysis. Again, this is it. Revise the target, make sure that it's appropriate. Are they really getting it? Or did you break it down? Did you get each aspect of the benchmark? As I stated, if you guys go and look at the other video for benchmarks, I showed you how one benchmark had like 4 different things within it, and also how it tied along with other benchmarks as well. Well, yeah. So one standard, let's do it that way, because that's really how it is. One standard had 4 or 5 benchmarks, and how that one strand within that one strand had 3 or 4 targets. I sound real smart just standing. I like it. All right, you guys. So you're gonna revise the targets when it's appropriate, and then you'll go through the cycle again of assessing and making sure that the students know what it is that they were supposed to know, and then you'll reevaluate. This is the grand scheme of the SAO, but you're going to be doing this every step of the way on a almost weekly or monthly base. It's really probably more weekly, you guys. But you're going to be redoing this on a micro level. This is the macro level of it, but you're really going to do it on a micro level, and this is what's going to allow you to heavily influence your students and see that progression as well. So let's keep going. Baseline data. Let's see what this says. So boom. As noted in step 1, I didn't read step 1 for y'all, but identifying learning goals. I guess we should go back. I guess the learning goal is to be identified by the teacher. The goal is intended to describe the knowledge and skills that the students should be able to demonstrate at the end of the course or the grade year. I think that's enough for me. Now that you know, we're good, right? Step 2. Oh, let me do y'all how I told y'all. Always read the first sentence and then the last one. Last sentence. In addition, teachers are expected to identify some of the instructional strategies they play to use to ensure that the students will have access and opportunity to engage in the learning expected by the SAO learning goals. So pretty much all the stuff I rambled on to you before, that's all that that's saying. So if you understood what I said before, you could have just stopped there. I'm one of those people. Once you know what you know, just stop. Don't confuse yourself. Develop or select assessments. Don't develop nothing. Select what you want because it's already built. You're a teacher. You got too many things to do. You got too many students. Stop trying to recreate the wheel. Don't develop nothing. It's already there. Use it. Use what's already given to you as resources. Now, if you have a student who has a deficiency and you have to build them up, then that's where that stuff comes into play. If you're a struggling teacher, make sure you follow this channel because I'm going to show you how to use your resources. Because ultimately, there's no reason for you to do more than you have to do. Don't bite off more than you could chew. But just so that we can say we did it, let's read the first and last sentence. It says, follow the identification of the learning goals in step 2. Teachers are asked to consider how student performance relative to the learning goal will be monitored and measured through selected or developed assessments. Again, don't develop nothing. Use the assessments that's already there, because if you're trying to create some other stuff, it's gonna be off. Your first line of defense, or the first thing that you want to do, you can do 2 things. And I recommend doing all of it. I'm not gonna lie. Well, 3. 1, whatever the test is at the beginning of the year that they're going to assess on, see that as a part of your benchmark. The STAR standards, take that as a part of your benchmark. And then your first assignment that you have with the students that deals with whatever benchmark you're looking to assess them on, use that as your actual guided, assessment. Use that. The first assignment that you're giving your students on R 1.1, 2.1, whatever the standard is. And again, I'm going to show you guys in another video mine, but there were some things I learned by the end of the year that I wish I would have known. Whatever reading and whatever standard it is that you're doing, make sure that the questions relate to that standard or that benchmark, and then allow those students to take that assessment. That's going to be your first thing. If you use that, you can use that again at the end of the year, wink, wink, and retest your students based off of that first initial assessment that you gave them. Take that same document and questions, and at the end of the year, pose it again to see if they have developed the skills enough in order to pass that and be proficient in that area. Again, don't recreate nothing, use what you have. And in here it says, in other words, I always read the last sentence. In other words, it is not expected that the section of the assessment wag the learning goal tail. I don't know what that is, so we go one sentence up. This is how I teach my kids. Whether the assessments are teacher developed or are identified by the district, the expected learning should be identified prior to the selection of the assessment. Oh, so same thing. So again, as I stated, if you're going to do it based off the district, you can use the assessment that the district provides at the very beginning of the year. So if it's a STAR test, use the STAR test. If it's the FSA testing, use the FSA testing scores. And if it's an assignment, I usually say do all 3, just so that you have enough to choose and to develop, your data with. If it's an assessment given by the teacher, then you have that as well. And like I said, whatever document you use at the very beginning of the year, so it could be, you can go to your book, your teacher's book, go to the back, choose a story and a story and the questions that relate to the benchmark that you're going to focus your SAO on. Give that to your students as their baseline, because it's also going to have, usually those stories as well have a little bit more collective information that they should be learning over the course of the year. So if it's ELA, let me not get too deep into it. It should have the stuff that's at the back should have more information that they should have collected along the course of the year. allow them to take that as an assessment, see where they are, and then again, give them that same exact test at the end of the year and see how they progress. Because there's certain things that you should have covered with them to help them expand their abilities. That's the simplest way to do it, you guys. All right, 3 and 4, baseline, analyzing baseline data, establishing targets. So it says, as noted in step 1, a broad overview of the data for the students in the class, school, and/or district should occur to identify overall strengths and needs, and to consequently be used to establish the learning goals. As I stated previously, you can do that with just the information that's provided. It says here, however, once the learning goal and anticipated assessments are identified, teachers need to examine information about the students' levels, performance at the start of the interval of instruction. Boom. If you did those 3 things that I asked you to do, you can check all this off. As I'm not going to read the rest of this because I don't care. I mean, I do, but I don't. I just want you to be the most successful. Going down to the last sentence, I always read the first sentence, last sentence. Ideally, determining students' knowledge of the prerequisite information allows the teacher to plan for differentiated instructions. This is very true. If you can see that once you get those scores back from FSA and they're telling you that your students are inadequate and remember I told you guys in another video, it used to be RL, RI. If you know that your students are deficient in RL, which is your literature standards, then you know that you need to hone in on particular questions that deal with literature and start to teach your students how to look at those questions, how to analyze those questions. This is a big thing because a lot of students know what to do. They just don't understand the questions because of how the questions are being written. So if you start to build in within your teaching style and building strategies of how to analyze questions using methods like putting boxes around certain words, underlining certain words. I used to always look at nouns and verbs with my students because that's going to tell you who and what you need to be focused in on. Then that's going to help you progress and help your students progress as they continue learning. But again, the scores from FSA and from STAR testing allows you to get a full scope of what your student is missing and what they do and don't know. The test that you provide to your students is going to allow you to see how you need to guide them in the learning process, as well on particular verbiage that they'll see within the context or the book that you're going to be using. And again, you have those resources already ready, whereas FSA, you don't know what they're going to see, what they're not going to see, what they will and won't be exposed to. But throughout the year, you know that these types of questions are going to be on the end of the school year test, and they have already seen it, but they're going to forget by the end of the year. But they've already seen these questions, and as we go through, you'll tell the students again, hey, you're going to see more questions like this. Be used to looking for these particular words. Understand how to cross out certain things or do a process of elimination. All of these are skills that your students need, and you have to build it in as you're learning. So boom, going down to the next piece, it says setting ending targets for students is probably the heaviest lifting, since this is not something that has typically been expected for teachers to formally do as part of their regular classroom practice. Again, I just told you how to do it and do it at the easiest interval, the easiest version. All right, the settings of targets should identify where the individual students will be at the end of the interval of instruction, and these established targets should be ambitious yet attainable. Ambitious, you're teaching them the standard or the benchmarks. Those are already ambitious. You're not recreating anything. Attainable is when you break them down into targets and you show the students what they should know based off of that standard and how they should do it. So if you're going through and you're constantly, sadly enough, at this point, you're not only teaching them the skill that they need, and you're not only looking just at the material, but you're also teaching them the pedagogy behind it. This is why we're doing it. This is how it's going to help you. If you give the students the why and the how, why is explain, of course, giving you, this is the reason for it. How, this is the steps to do it. The why and the how is going to get you where you need to be every time. All right. So always explain to your students the why and the how, why we're doing this, how we're going to do it. If you go through these steps, and if you don't know as a teacher, again, you can always write me in the chat you can write me in the chat. You can ask me questions on a particular, if it's a particular subject. I would definitely tell you to reach out to my consulting side with my business, and we can look specifically at the material that you have for your students, and then we can work there. That's the easiest way to go about it. So the why and the how is important when you're delivering information to the students, and that's going to help them to push and do what it is that they're going to be doing. The what is never important, because the what is what is going to change every time. What are the why we're learning this and how we're going to learn it takes care of the what, and the when is all the time. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep going. And the where is in the classroom. Hello. Number 5. So prior to the implementation of the SAO, teachers should develop a plan of action and a timeline for various steps of the SAO process. Down here at the very end, it says prepare for the mid-year review. Date is accountable for, as well as many other activities. Pretty much, a lot of that doesn't matter. Your planning is your lesson plans. If you are a teacher who's going through and you lesson plan properly, then that's going to take care of all of the planning and implementation for you. In my folder, again, I'm going to show you this in a different video. I included my lesson plans in there because that was the planning. When we did our collaborative planning, I got silent because I planned the whole school year out in the first week of school, because that's just me. I feel as though if you don't properly plan out, and in that time where they're telling you to clean your rooms and fix your rooms, and you're having all these meetings that really don't matter. No disrespect to the district, but they don't. I'm sorry. It's the same thing practically every year. And then you have your teachers coming in and they're behind. And then they're always playing catch up because they're behind. And on top of that, you have grading and all these other things. This has nothing to do with it. I'm going to stick to the SAO, but I'm just saying I planned out my whole year the first week of school. And then of course you make adjustments and changes as the year progresses, as you see your students' numbers and stuff. But if you have that skeleton of, okay, this is what we're kind of gonna do, that's it. And then of course going into collaborative planning, where you talk with your other teachers, your co-teachers, or whoever, because some of you guys are able to have the inclusion teachers in the classroom with you. At our school, previous years, I was supposed to have inclusion teachers and never had them. They showed up once every quarter. So, if you're able to actually include them in it and show them the lesson and how you guys want to work through and manipulate it, we're going to talk all about that later in another video. But again, that collaboration, once you have that skeleton down of this is what we're going to teach when and how we're going to kind of embed these standards together, then it's easy to flesh it out and collaborate with other people and how they may adjust and change, or maybe a week behind or a week ahead or whatever else based off of their students' needs, because it's always driven by data. Data is the most important thing. Let's look at me. Data is the most important thing and the driving factor as a teacher. And as long as your data is reflective of what it is that the reason is supporting the reason why you're doing certain things for your students, then you're going to be safe. That is your safe space, is making sure you have data and documentation to support what it is that you're doing. All right. So planning and implementing. Plan as much as you can, as early as you can. And then, of course, based off your scores and assessments that you have provided within your work. Again, if you're not recreating a wheel, you're using the resources that are already provided for you. It's easy to continue on with your baseline and understanding what connects with what. And we'll talk about that in another video. All right. The cycle of instructions and assessments. Again, it's just the data. Does the data support that your students are proficient in this area? Does it not? Do you need to reteach? What do you need to do in order to get the engagement from your students? What other ways are you monitoring what your students are doing and how they are becoming efficient in that area? That's it. And then, of course, just like I said, revise the target when appropriate. All of this I've already said. Ain't even no reason to go through most of this stuff. So let's talk about these SAO numbers, and well, we might let's glance at this real quick. Let's kind of talk about them. That doesn't matter. Guidelines, that doesn't matter. All right, collaborations. I already told you how to collaborate with your teams. That's pretty much exactly what it's saying. We already done discussed this. Let's keep it moving. Content area and courses. Real quick, y'all can pause the screen at any time, read these things for yourself. So here I'll read this. So because this would have probably been very important for me or those of you who teach multiple classes. Again, if you have multiple courses and classes, you should focus on the district, school, and or classroom areas of need. If you've done those, if you've collected that information that I told you, based off of the class that you selected, if you collected that information that I responded to previously, you'll be able to take care of this. Even if you are a math teacher or whatever else, again, that district information and test that you take, the FSA scores, and then having a test that is given at the beginning, pretty much whatever you have selected at the end of the year to address your students or to assess your students, use it at the beginning. Start with the end in mind. That's the biggest, that's all this is telling you. Start with the end in mind, and that's how you're going to be successful. All right, student selection. So here, this is what I was talking about earlier. So it says a teacher's SAO must include all students on the roster for the grade level or course with which the learning goal is aligned. So as I stated, I taught last year ELA. All of it was 8th grade ELA. I chose the first period class. So I included all of those students. The numbers again were low. So for me, I chose in order to make my population a little bit larger and to have a buffer area, I actually chose a few students from my second period class as well. What they don't want you to do here is they don't want you to be biased with your student selection. So it does say here that if a student has 26 students in the selected class and 10 of which are with IEPs, 2 ELL students, these students must be included in the target selection of the SAO. So they want you to make sure that you're not being biased when you are collecting data. You want to have a well-rounded view of students who have different needs. Again, IEPs, ELL, ESE, whatever it is, that is there. It needs to be a well-rounded view of how you affect all types of individuals in your classroom. So again, that's fine, but just add a few more as a buffer, just in case for yourself, especially if you are in lower income neighborhoods where you know that the students may not come. Like I said, first period for me, I didn't think this through when I selected them at first, but I chose some additional students just as a buffer because I chose both classes. I think I did the entirety of first and second period. I did. Minus one person because the student had already stated that they weren't going to be there, and they weren't actually. They left. So I actually did choose the whole first and second period class. But one, because first period, the buses, they're late. Usually the kids don't even get to school until second period. There's a lot of discrepancies and issues that were taking place in Polk County. That's Polk County's business, but do what you can do that fits you best. And be mindful of what you're selecting. Don't be a detriment to yourself. If you know that and I know this for a lot of teachers, if you know that you struggle with your 4th and 5th period class, your lunch period class, because it gets interrupted, or maybe you choose lunch because it's a longer period, or maybe, you know, 5th period, the students that come after lunch, they're always sleepy, and, you know, whatever else, then try not to choose those classes. But if you know that those students can push through and that they strive and they're responsible and they show accountability or whatever else, then choose them. But be mindful to support yourself the best way that you can at the end of the day. Okay. All right. So this says throughout the course of the school year or semester, the student populations may change. This is what I was telling you about before. And then it's telling you that something can be found on page 76. Let's go to 76 real quick. This is 14. Oh, so this is the rubric. Oh, that's cute. Okay. So this is one of the rubrics. We'll get there. I just wanted to know what it was, y'all. Y'all know I be nosy. All right. Therefore, the SAO decision tree will assist educators in determining whether the students should be included in the target section of the SAO. Okay. So in this particular area, let's look at it. Acceptable, quality, insufficient. Let's look at insufficient. Provides an unclear, insufficient, or confusing explanation on how the data are used. No baseline data. Won't read. I don't need this. If y'all do what I asked y'all to do at the very beginning, you'll be successful. Don't stress all that other stuff out. All right, so keep going through. You guys can look this up. I'm not gonna go through all of this stuff, but it is good to know your schedule. So when your goals are supposed to be in, you should have already selected them at this point, but for next year, because you know it's coming back around again. You want to familiarize yourself with SAOs. You want to start looking at your goals and assessments. Usually this month, like September, you're choosing your target students. We've already had some hurricane, not volcanoes, Jamekia. We already had some hurricane days, so they may have extended some things, some deadlines for you. However, this here tells you typically at the end of the year, the end of the month of September, you need to have your SSOs planned and pushed out. So this is a good video. This is a good time for me to be pushing this video out, and you can share it with your other teaching peers to really understand and digest the SAO process. Make sure you've selected the right class, whether you are in the classroom or not in the classroom. Make sure you selected the right classes. I think those who have students who change up a lot more, because they only do like a half a year, your stuff will be a little bit different. I may not go over that as much, but pull from this information what you can and use it. All right. By October, you're going to be talking with your administration. You're going to be solidifying, get your SAOs approved. Again, you're going to be between October. Well, if you already have a lesson plan in August, there's no reason why you can't just pull that information and then add it into your SAOs, even though it says September, and September is fine, but it's telling you about the implementation pieces from September to December. You should already, because September is where you start to do a lot of your testing and that information. Yes, you do need to monitor that because that's what you're going to be pulling in to prove your stuff. So I get why they said, but go ahead and start listing out that information when you do your lesson plans. Keep those, whatever the class is doing, keep that as well in a binder, or keep it separate. Whatever you're going to use as your formative assessments or summative assessments, keep all that information collected for yourself so that you don't have to do too much running around. And let's see. Oh, it said here, instruction, formative assessment, progress monitoring, summative assessments are implemented with fidelity. Yeah, I be knowing what I be talking about. Just listen to me, you'll be successful. I tell this to my kids, I tell this to the other teachers that I've assisted. Majority of my teachers have either got effective or highly effective. So have I. So let's just keep it moving. But keep all of the information that you have. Again, I'm going to do a video where we're going to take a look at an example of an SAO binder that I've created for myself. Just look out for that video. Okay. here it just tells you what deadlines are where, when you'll be going back into Journey, when you need to follow up with your administration. Some of your administration may not talk to you guys as much about SAOs, but it's still, all they have to do is mention it. That's their part. You need to be able to, and I hate that for you, but you need to be able to make sure that you are, like it says, you're implementing this stuff with fidelity, and that you are actually aware of all the deadlines. I would also ask you to speak with your testing coordinator, get those dates, have that stuff scheduled out. Make sure that you're preparing your students when going into the testing arena. Make sure that you are aware of holidays and different things like that, so that you properly focus on your content area a little bit stronger around certain days, and that you're not missing out on a new lesson around a testing time. So planning is going to be very strategic for you, and you have to be very strategic with your planning and your implementation. Again, April is typically when you have to have everything in. That kind of puts a damper on you getting that last testing data from STAR and from FSA, because their last test is in May. So this is why I told you to use all three, which is your own documentation or your own test as well, because then around mid-April, I would say the second week of April, you can go ahead and give out that test. Because what I would usually say is, depending on when your spring break is, excuse me, y'all, depending on when your spring break is, when you come back from spring break, go back into reiterating the information that you guys have already gone over. Go back to strongly, hitting these standards and these benchmarks with your students and how that looks, and go back into analyzing the questions. That gives you maybe about 2 to 3 weeks of really influencing your students on that, reintroducing them to stuff that they already know that you should continuously be doing all year. But do it again through that time, and roughly about the second week, in April, if you're not testing, go ahead and give them that assessment. So then you have time to look through the assessment, look through your data, show whether or not you see increases, how they've been out. You look at your numbers as well between that April, because again, it says mid-April final conferences and stuff, mid-April and May. Go through, you can take out the last of those, remove the last of those students who maybe have, I don't remember how many absences it was. It might have been like 30, 20 something. I don't know. It depends based off of if you have them for a full year, or if you only have them for a semester or a quarter. Yeah. A semester. We have 2 semesters, 4 quarters. So depends on if the students, if you have those students for a semester or not. So you'll be able to remove those other students and hit all of those deadlines. So going down here, SAO, teachers, SAO, or non-teachers, the decision tree. Did you provide instruction to a whole class or a small group of the same students for the entire year of the semester? Here, if it's yes, then you have to do your SAO. Remember, I told you it'll be a little different for those of you who do not have them for the whole entire year. So if it's no, do I primarily provide specialized services or manage a program? Or do I provide instruction to different students for short-term period of times? This is probably more so going to go to your inclusion teachers, your administration, different things like that. So again, they have different templates for you. Primarily, I'm dealing with the classroom teacher template at this point, just a little FYI. Here are some other questions, excuse me, that you can be asking yourself too, as you are putting your SAO together, as you are winding down. Excuse me. These are your essential questions. What is the most important knowledge or skill I want my students to be able to attain for the end of the year? If you're an ELA teacher, one of those things would be the EE standards that I showed you guys in the what is that? thing called again? The EE standards that I showed you guys in the benchmarks, right? For the benchmarks, I was gonna sit up here and pull it up, but go back to that video. Get those EE standards, use those, because you're supposed to be going over those like every day. And then I know a lot of teachers who always try to do the writing. Don't. Don't do stuff that can deal with multiple choice questions. Do not do the writing. I know it seems like it's easy and it's nice or whatever else. Don't. And I'll go through some of that as well, like I said in the next video. Right here, what evidence can I collect that allow my students to demonstrate their knowledge? Whatever multiple choice questions that you provided for them, keep it easy. And again, I've done an example. I've done an example of a lesson plan, like help area that can be helpful to you. But I'm going to show you guys, like I say, as we progress, some more details. Then here, what prerequisite knowledge and skills do my students have to have in the beginning of instruction with respect to learning goals? Based on what I know about my students' instruction plan, where do I expect them to be by the end of the year? If you start with the end in mind and you use that documentation that I told you to do at the end, that you're gonna, your end of year questions, and you use it at the very beginning just to get a baseline for your students, you'll know exactly how to manipulate everything throughout the semester. Just go back to the beginning of the video, play, pause, do what you need to do, take them notes, implement it. That's the easiest way. Let's go through here. So in here, this is just the breakdown of what you need for your SAO. It gives you a good example. I would say, again, get this document, go through it, pause, read through it, pause if you have not gotten it. Use some of what you've had in previous years. If you didn't think that you were as successful the year before, or it didn't make sense, or you want to make some adjustments, again, I'm going to do another video just to kind of go through what you can have. Right here, I do want you to note, if y'all have rubrics or scoring guides, use them. There are a lot in the McGraw-Hill, online and within the book. If you're doing like writing, again, I would not recommend the writing as your the way that you assess your students, because a lot of the students, not as the primary, you can always do it as a secondary for yourselves, to prove that you're touching on all the things, because you do have to hit that stuff for your standards and your benchmarks. However, that primary goal that you're going to focus through on the entire year, like if you're talking about argumentative writing, you don't do argumentative writing the whole entire year. You have informative, explanatory, all this other stuff. So, narrative, which we have not really tapped into the last few years, but you have all these other things. So I wouldn't really do writing, because each quarter they're doing a different version of writing. So that's not a whole year focus. However, citing textual evidence, using inferences, those things, it's all year, even within writing. So you can still see that regardless of what you use. But again, grading rubrics, grading styles, whatever it is, they're in the books. Do not recreate anything. Please spare yourself. All right, so making sure things are aligned, making sure it's relatable for your story, making sure that it's fair and unbiased. If you're using those objectives that's already provided for you, all of this is already taken care of. You could just check. You want to make sure, again, that you have formative assessments. You can do that every single day. I did it at least 3 times a week, but you can literally do it every single day. But documentation wise, I did it at least 3 times a week. But I did have questions every single day. It's not that difficult, as long as you're not recreating the wheel. And again, I'm going to show you that in another video. Summatives are, again, per quarter, end of the unit. Your summative assessments could be what you use, which is STAR, or whatever other assessments, if you don't want to create it for yourselves, or just create one. Pull out the book. Don't create as in you create, just find one that fits because it's available. If you are teaching from the McGraw-Hill, You have the McGraw-Hill book that the students have, and the teacher manual, which should be 2 books that covers that student book. And then they also give you an actual testing book as well. So make sure that you're using that if you want to as a summative assessment. But whatever you are using, just remember to collect it as data, put it inside of your 3-ring binder. You hear? I'm going to go over that in the next video, but put it inside your 3-ring binder and keep on going. Let's see. I did way more formative assessments than I did summative, but at least you should have at least about 4, roughly. This is what it's telling you. 4 times where you're looking and collecting summative assessments that you're doing. And that's because at the end of first semester, second semester, third, and then of course towards the end of fourth quarter, you will be having your summative assessments. So, and that's just to collect. Sorry, y'all, something was stabbing me. But that's just to collect the data as a whole. So if you're looking at a benchmark, just one specific benchmark at a time when you're teaching, then your summative is going to be the collection of benchmarks that you went through for that whole semester. That's it. So formative assessments is one area of study at a time, can be, and then your summative is all of those together. But you want to make sure that you're giving your students opportunity to combine all of that information together prior to giving them an actual summative assessment, so that you're making sure that they're not going to be lethargic when they get to that testing environment. All right, so outside of that, this is just going over the baselines and information like that. For yourself, you want to make sure that you choose your students, you place them on a chart, on a document, and say where they are. So where they are, as far as, are they below expectation, approaching, meeting it? And then did they, once you get towards the end, have they exceeded what you thought? Because you're going to also put what you believe their target should be by the end of the year. And be honest with yourself. I think that is best that you be honest, because you're going to be grading yourself as well towards the end of that, whether or not the student made it to that level. So look at those numbers, be very strategic and clear on what your goals are. Clarity is what's going to provide you with the best results. All right. Anything else? If y'all have any questions, just write me, let me know. I think for the most part, that is the gist of it. If you did what I started out telling you at the beginning, and you start with the end in mind, you should be very successful in implementing all this stuff. I'm going to show you again, this has some stuff, has some questions for you to answer. I'm going to show you an example of, hopefully, I'm going to show you at least an example of what I put together. Because I do have to block out some of my kids' names and things like that. So I cannot show you the actual SAO documentation that I sent in, but I can show you how I put together my 3-ring binder to support all of the activities. And I'm just going through this just so that you guys can see what is here in this document. And then of course, you can always look for it for yourselves. All right. So, all right, you guys, I am gonna be done with this for today, but I hope that this was very beneficial to you. Write in the chat, let me know if you have any questions, if you want clarity on a particular thing, so that I can make sure that I go back through and provide that for you. And again, like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back in another video and showing you how to get started on putting your 3-ring binder together and how it can eventually turn out for you in the long term. All right, y'all. I love y'all. Bye. Y'all listen. I'm trying to get in here. There we go. Bye, y'all.